Welcome to Season 2 of Producer Points. My name is Justin Gamella, and I'll be your host. I'm a producer and songwriter who's had the honor of working with some of the best in the industry. This season, we're diving even deeper into one-on-one conversations with producers, mixers, songwriters, and artists, exploring their unique journeys, creative process, and insights that shape great music. Join me for real talks, straight from the studio, where music and life intersect. This is Producer Points. There's never been a better time or a more overwhelming time to self-release music. Between distribution platforms, playlist pitching, social content, and direct-to-fan tools, artists today have more control than ever, but also way more to figure out. As a producer, I'm usually focused on the music itself, not the release and distribution side of things. But I think this is a space more of us need to understand, especially if we want to support the artists we work with, or release our own music one day. This is a topic I've been wanting to dig in for a while, and today's roundtable is a perfect chance to do that. Whether you're an artist going the independent route or a producer trying to understand the bigger picture, this episode's for you. Let's get into it. Today we have 3 amazing guests. First, we have a genre-bending artist, producer, and songwriter who's released 11 albums since 2019. Known for his prolific output and raw, personal storytelling, he's carved out a lane all his own. It happens to be one of my first collaborators and closest friends in Los Angeles, Unlike Pluto. Thanks for being here, buddy.
What's up, man?
Next, we have a rising indie artist and songwriter whose heartfelt songwriting and dreamy vocals are catching ears around the world. She's also a longtime friend and creative collaborator, Kat Kennedy. Hey, thank you for being here.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right, and lastly, we have a producer, songwriter, and artist behind the pop duo Sleeping Lion, with credits including Trans Violet and Haley Knox. He's also the host of his own podcast, Talking Lion, where he explores the stories behind songs. Nate Flaks, thanks for being here, man.
Heyo, how's it going?
Good. This is the first time we're meeting like in person. We've been texting for quite some time, so, well, not in person, over Zoom, but...
Parasocial friends, it's kind of the whole thing.
It's like one of the things about the music industry where like I have a lot of those, like a lot, especially like producer people where I'm just like, I'm friends with them just through this. And we're like, yeah, you get that new piece of gear. How's it working out for you? You know, just really super nerdy conversations. So, like I said, self-releasing music is something so foreign to me. I was actually an artist. I was in an indie pop duo, literally 10 years ago now. And we were self-releasing music. And I did at one point have a pretty good handle on, the best ways to go about it and how things, get attention. But I just know from talking to people like Kat and artists who I work with and have music released with that how much it's changed in just 10 years and probably even more in the last 2 or 3 years with Spotify changing and TikTok and all that other stuff. All of you guys have self-released, you've done releases with indies, whatever. Pluto, I'll start with you, buddy, because you have God knows how many releases, because you are so...
It's terrible. It's terrible for my prostate. Go ahead.
He just sits all day.
Is that what's wrong with the prostate?
Yeah, that's right. But I think it's a good question. Why self-release in 2025? Why do you like to self-release a lot?
Oh, I mean, it's a tough question because you have to start if you're an artist that has already a following, it's easier to self-release. And if your release radar algorithm is already something that is moving, like a moving train, it is much easier to get the will courage to finish a song and spend 20 hours on a kick drum. When you don't have that and you're releasing a song and you're working a lot of time and you're releasing it to what you feel like is essentially the void of TikTok and Gen Z's just rolling their eyes at your music. I don't know. It's easier to get how I'm able to do it in 2025 is the fact that I did build something since 2016.
Right. But just to cut you off really quickly, I think it's I want you guys to talk from the point of view of your own self, right? Because it's our listeners, you guys are kind of releasing at different levels, and I think it's important because we have listeners from all different levels as well. And I think it's so just keep that in mind. I think when you're talking about it too, because I wanted you to come on here because you've been self-releasing for almost 10 years now. On
Lord have mercy on me.
Yeah, yeah. So what made you? Because you were for a while you were releasing with smaller labels like
Yeah.
Monster Cat and Lowly Palace? What made you want to be like, you know what, I kind of want to do this myself?
I was really, when I did release with labels and I did tour, it did help jumpstart everything. It did. But I kept a pretty close grip on my fan base. So even if it was 30 people on my Discord, I made sure I showed up every week and I did a pre-release with the song, even if there's like 5 people in there. And this was like what, 2018, 2019 days. I think what made me go to self-release is I started to notice that most of my streams on Spotify were actually coming from my Spotify. And the label stopped, I stopped getting playlisting. I really was not getting, it wasn't any there. I saw no reason to release with labels at a certain point.
Right.
And because you can check where your plays are coming from. If most of it is coming from Release Radar, why am I working with a label? What is the point? And I think how you get to that, how you get to your Release Radar being, uh, you know, I'm not going to say like worth money, but how you get your Release Radar to a point where you're like, oh, I can release music and be proud of it and not have it be 5 plays, is you have to build trust with your listeners. Is you always have to release not consistently in the sound, but in quality, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
But the reason to answer, I have ADHD, so I'm so sorry. To answer your question, I stopped seeing in 2019 specifically, I stopped seeing a reason my plays were not coming from what the label was doing. There was no marketing budget. There was nothing. They were just distroing my song and taking 50%, which I saw no reason. And to add to this, a lot of the distributors that are promising label services, I'm not going to name any, but the ones that do, there is only so many songs they can actually pitch every single week in their portals with whatever distributor they're working with, or if they have their own distribution. So you have to be careful of that too. But I stopped doing it because I didn't see a point.
Yeah, dude, I love that. Kat, you're kind of in like the opposite range, right? Where you just, you have to go into the specifics of like your label deal, but you just have begun releasing with a small indie. And, what was your experience, self-releasing music those first, 10 releases or so?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because my deal is like song based, it's single based. So it's really not like a deal where I'm locked in as an artist or a brand. So I'm releasing with them. Actually, it's kind of similar to like maybe you would think more like a distribution, but they have been really great with like supporting me and, getting me on some smaller playlists and things like that. And that has really helped, I think, my streams. For anybody who's listening, though, who's wondering, like, should I go with a label? Should I not? If they have an opportunity, I will say, just like you were saying, when it comes down to it, it changed absolutely nothing about getting a group of people, like a community who's going to keep coming back, because Spotify streams are one thing, but those can be like tens of thousands of passive listeners who will never come out to a show, will never buy merch. And at the end of the day, as we all know, it doesn't pay a ton. Like Spotify is not going to be the big moneymaker, unfortunately. So I will say that, like, even though that side of things has shifted a little bit with the label, and the kind of the numbers and the optics on Spotify, which I'm really appreciative of, I am still doing all the same work as if I was self-releasing, because just like you were saying, it's so much better to have 30 people in a Discord than it is to have 100,000 followers that don't really engage, and they maybe saw you from one video, and you know what I mean? So it's just interesting because, I think at the end of the day, no matter which path you take, it always comes back to, you have to really connect with your community and make a community. And that's the only way you can really make it as an artist, with a label, without a label.
Yeah, no, totally. It's like a
Preach.
thing. But it's a thing. It's like, I think it feels really nice to like, let's say you get a song on New Music Friday, right? You're like, oh, cool. That means I'm going to get like 100 something thousand streams. That's just like kind of what it is nowadays. But It's exactly right. And I know a couple smaller indie labels that like, we don't even pitch new music for it anymore because it's so pointless. It's like an industry thing for the most part. It's not really going to like get you new fans. I mean, not saying it won't, but it's not, it's going for the release radar is exactly what you guys are saying, building up your fans. Nate, what's been your experience with your project self-releasing? And I don't know if you guys have ever done any like, indie or major label releases like to kind of compare it to.
Yeah, we did a couple, especially like back in our like sort of earlier days, like we, Majestic Casual, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. I think that and it's kind of funny because to Armand's point and also to Kat's point, I feel like we got grandfathered a little bit into sort of the algorithmic floor. We haven't put out music in over a year, not seriously in almost 2 or 3, but like our monthly listeners are still at 50,000 because we have Discover Weeklies, and when we put little things out, it still gets the release radar. And so, but that's because of something that we essentially playing the Spotify game back in 2015 when it was easier, when you could kind of get bigger, sort of buzzier moments, and then that kind of just holds on the algorithm for as long as it has. I think that, and I was actually talking to Noah, the other half of Sleep in Line, about this a couple weeks ago. I think that we kind of fooled ourselves over the course of our career that there was no difference between like playing a system and building an audience, that like having a good like Spotify release and having like an actual genuine audience was something that was the same. And I think seeing those numbers and seeing the numbers come week after week makes it really easy to kind of fool yourself into that. But when the chips are down and you kind of have to start, maybe you're doing a solo thing or it's been a little while since you've put something out, it becomes a lot harder. And I think you see a lot of that friction, or even when you're trying to sell tickets, you see a lot of that friction. I think the biggest sort of shift that has been challenging, and one of the reasons we took a step back from self-releasing, was because when we, especially in like the Spotify era, there was a coherent strategy. I think there was always some kind of very clear, very singular, coherent strategy. There was the Submit Hub era, there was the Spotify era. Right. I mean, even when TikTok was at the beginning, it was actually a very good strategy. Just put something out, promote it on TikTok, let it go viral. And it was very one-to-one. If you do this, then that'll happen, and here's your win state. I think that simultaneously, all the ways that like Discovery sort of scattered in a way where nobody's really claimed it now at this point. And also what we consider a win state has also changed. Like, I think that it used to be, if you get a lot of Spotify streams, that's a successful release. But now it's like, what is a success on a release? Is it that it is playing on radio? Is it that it's syncing on Vanderpump Rules? Is it that it's, is it that like you're able to play the shows, or you get an agent from it or something? I think because we don't necessarily know what we want from a release, we don't necessarily know how to get it, and there isn't one coherent strategy anymore. That's what I think is challenging, but also what I think is like maybe the gauntlet being thrown of, hey, if it is the Wild West, if there isn't any rules or win states, maybe what you make up the win state, you make up the strategy,
Yeah, I think too, this is, I have a conversation with artists that I work with all the time, right? Where it's when you're starting to release music, you have to decide pretty early on what kind of artist you want to be. Are you trying to be a pop artist where you're like, I just want to have a song or two, blow up, whatever? Or do you want to be, an artist that like has a real following where it's like, maybe none of your songs have more than 50 million streams or like 20 million streams or whatever, but all of your songs have around 1 million streams, right? That's what I look for when I want to work with an artist. So much like monthly listeners and all that stuff, they're not really great metrics, especially if the songs are being playlisted. They kind of like shift it in a way. It doesn't people equate that with fans a lot.
You got to adjust for inflation too, like 1 million monthly listeners isn't what it used to be,
Right. And like, I know so many artists that like they've been telling me like, yeah, my monthly listeners have gone like way down because they're just not playlisting non-major label artists as much as they used to. Just because the major labels have really taken over and there's more competition than ever before. And, it's just like understanding and how to use the metrics of Spotify exactly like Pluto was saying, where he was like, yeah, I can see like my listeners are listening here, and I can like go to my Discord and just like understand, and then people use that to tour and blah blah blah, which is getting onto the next topic here. See what I did there? Transition, building an audience without a label. Well, I guess we'll start with you, Pluto, because I just brought you up. Like, how have you been building your audience slowly over this past like 6 or 7 years of self-releasing and like I know you have such a unique community in your like Plutoverse, your Saturn project as well. It's so cool. Yeah, speak a little bit on that.
I think it's, if you notice, you just have to want to do it. You have to care. You have to, there are some artists that I know that just release music and really just are focused on the other things of being an artist, of touring and partying and, enjoying making the music, which is all we all here do. But I think it's something that you want to do because I'm sure a lot of major label artists are signed that don't build audiences. I'm sure. I think you just have to want to do it. You have to want to connect with these people, these like-minded people that are fans of you and what you create. It's just that, and finding a platform that does work for you. I don't think every platform is going to work for you. I think it might translate if one does really well. For me, it was YouTube. For me, YouTube, I noticed 20 comments on a video in 2017. I was like, oh, 20 people. Interesting. I don't even have 20 friends. So I'm just going to respond to every single one. And I cared about doing that. I woke up at like 7 a.m. and I just did it every day. And it wasn't just thank you or like hearts. It was genuine responses. And that was my dog, by the way. He's in my lap. That wasn't me. And it's just I genuinely wanted to do it. And I think it just comes down to that. Do you want to build an audience or do you just want to release really cool music, which is totally fine too. There's no wrong answer. And
it's just understanding that they're different things.
Yeah,
they are different things.
Totally. And also accept the fact that there might be an artist that you think might not make as good as music as you. They have a crazy fan base, like rabid fan base. Happens all the time. Stephen King used to compare himself to writers he thought was worse than him, and it made him happy. Okay, I know this because he wrote it in his book. But I think just it's a different way to have an artist career, but there are also ways to, I don't know, make lo-fi music of anime covers, and that can make money too. But I don't know if that's going to build you a fan base. I have no idea.
Right. Kat, you're kind of in the beginning phases of your artist career. I feel like, starting to bubble and build a community. What are you kind of doing to start building that community like Pluto was saying?
Yeah, well, I think he touched on a really good thing, which is engaging beyond the superficial level of like heart for the algorithm. I think it's like, honestly, it all comes back to like actually caring about the people that you are making art for, and you can kind of go all different kinds of ways to try to like cheat the system. And I thought you had such a good point. There is such a big difference between numbers and having an actual real audience, And when you start to respond to comments with genuine, I care about you, like for real, not just that this is boosting engagement, I think people really respond well to that. And it's tricky too, because, on the one hand, I'm very genuine. I really do care. Like I care about the people who are listening to me. I care about the people I'm talking with. But then on the other side, you do have to kind of play the game a little bit of trying to chase the algorithm so you can find those people that care about your art and you care about, so it's like, it's definitely a balancing act between, me trying to find what works to reach the people that I want to reach, and then holding on to them and connecting and like forming real bonds with them. But I definitely think I've been trying to capture people because, as we all know, like TikTok, Instagram, more and more it's algorithmically based, so you get shown to new audiences, like For You page and things like that. They follow you and then they may never see you again. That's the thing, even if they wanted to, right? And so I think I've been working personally to try to capture people outside. So I just started a Discord. I've been experimenting with that to see if that's a good platform to try to capture people and be for the people who want to actually talk to me consistently, that they're able to, and we're not blocked by like an algorithm or something like that.
Yeah, I love that. Nate, what was Sleeping Lion doing to kind of start building up the fan base?
Well, and that was, I think, where we had it really right in the beginning and not as right towards the end, which is that like I think above, and especially now, above everything, and this isn't the same as like a release strategy, but I think that like the best plan for building an audience is that it has to be embodied, that it has to be, and I don't mean that exclusively playing live, but that's what, playing live does effectively.
Right.
And similarly, it's what separates being an artist from being a producer or a writer is that you're the one standing there with the song. You're the one standing there on the stage, doing, that's you in the spotlight, that's you in the corner, whatever. And so I do think that like some of our biggest, and they all feed into each other, like our biggest Instagram following and engagement bump, and then, which led to streaming bumps, tended to coincide with our sold out shows when we were opening for artists that had big followings, when we were playing some of our more local markets that where we were able to sell out the rooms. That's when we got the most kind of like audience engagement, willing to do anything. This is a longer story, but like I one time was saved from like a mugging by a fan, like who held up pepper spray and was wearing our shirt. It's like that's how you wind
crazy.
Up with those kinds of the tattoo fans. We worked with an artist many years ago named Fangs, Phangs, and his streaming was fine. It was great on streaming. But every single show we ever played with him or saw, it was a sold out room. Everyone was dancing. 3 or 4 people had tattoos of his stuff. Like he knew how to get the audience embodied. So when we started out, we were playing 100 shows a year. We were doing like little pop-up events when we were comfortable to do that. But, we didn't have that many expenses or a dog or partners or anything like that. So we drove all up and down the East Coast and then the West Coast and just sort of went to where people might be and would see who could be there. And I do think that there's something about, especially now that post-pandemic, so to speak, like the craving for like an embodied connection with an artist and with a fan that I think, because I think no matter what, the most successful thing on TikTok or Spotify, there's a built-in like expiration date on that attention. And I think that it's, for me, the people I've always been a fan of are the people who like, oh yeah, like I got a drink with that band after the show, or oh yeah, when they played this amazing show and it still kind of resonated with me every time I heard their song. So I don't want to be the guy who's like, and the solve is live, but there is something about not discounting like just how effective an embodied experience can be.
Live shows are so important. I think we forget it sometimes with artists. I was going to bring it up later, but I'll bring it up now because it kind of makes sense. Like I've been doing music my whole life. Yeah. But my wife is a huge Ani DeFranco fan. Most people don't even know who Ani DeFranco is, but for the listeners who might not, she's been self-releasing music for a while, since like the early 90s. She's been releasing music, folk, like a jazz folk artist. It doesn't matter. But I'm just looking at her. I was like, I'm curious how many monthly listeners she has. She has like 250,000 monthly listeners. Yeah, I'm just like curious. Right, 250,000 monthly listeners, whatever. But I've been going to shows of hers for now 15 years because that's how long I've been with my wife. And every single show, 1,000-person venues, sold out. She has, she's not doing a Discord thing, but she has like a Patreon. She has like her website, her email list of just like people, her fans are rabid. And she has this like very unique connection. And another favorite artist of mine, Andrew Bird, has a very similar thing. An artist who I think is doing it really well right now, who's a newer artist, is, and again, these are just my personal favorite artists, so I'm being very biased, but Medium Build. I don't know if you guys know Medium Build at all. Oh, yeah. But like same thing. He's in that like, and I'm curious now, I want to look it up, like 300 or 400, thousand monthly listeners.
But he's playing in every cafe, 600,000. He's playing in every cafe too.
But that guy is touring his ass off, and he's playing. And mind you, he is signed to Island Records, but he doesn't have a song that has more than like 7 million streams. You know what I mean? And he just like, but all of his songs have hundreds of thousands, and that to me is like he has fans that are listening. And I think those are like important things to remember when, as an artist, you're creating the art. Someone like explained this to me, and I thought it was like a kind of fun comparison, where it's like being an artist, you know, in today's world is like kind of like you hear these like stories of like these like video game streamers and how it's like, yeah, I started and I had no one watching, and then I had one person watching, and then two, and now millions, and blah blah blah. And it's but you talk to all of them, and they're like, yeah, it took years to like get to that point. And I think the one thing that, you know, sometimes people we want everything to be immediate in today's society. We want virality. We want, you know, things to just be like, I released it and it blew up. And that's not how you build a fan base. How you build a fan base is being patient and putting the time in. Like Pluto was saying, he put the time in. He responded to every single comment. You know, playing live is such an important thing. Like, play those gigs where it's like, I played shows to 5 people. It sucked, but like those 5 fans were like fans for life after that. You know, people love saying, I saw them when. Nate, you have something to say?
Yeah. I think also like early on, just because of like our own interests, we took a lot of inspiration from like a career building standpoint from both like the YouTube community and from like comedians, because we were seeing like especially on those YouTubers who also had music careers, people like George Watsky who could sell out any room or sell out a tour. But also, you know, it was because there was this sort of start in the YouTube space. So he was also in those communities like VidCon and places where people would meet and collaborate and see each other. Similarly, comedians. I mean, think about like if somebody's a comedian, but they told you that they only posted on TikTok, you'd be like, okay, yeah. have you ever made a person in a room laugh? And I think that like most of the comedians, they have their schedule booked out. You know, it's like they're at the Hollywood Improv doing like a crowd work show, and then they're at UCB. Like, they have their weekend booked of just putting in the reps of making 5 people, 10 people, 20 people in person laugh. I think that we really pushed on that. I think when the pandemic hit, we were like, oh great, okay, so we're all inside, we can take a break from doing that. And so when TikTok rolled along, we're like, oh, we're not going to do that. Like, why would we're taking our break from the thing we were doing. Why would we try to do something that is almost sort of the opposite of what we were doing? Right. And we just missed the boat on that in like a very real way.
Yeah, it's so funny. You know, Pluto, I wanted to go to you because like you really don't play out live that much, and you've built like this like really insular community. Like, I wonder if you can like speak on that, because you have such a unique thing going on. I love it.
I think, again, I care about the fans. I love the fans. Like, they're like family and like friends. A lot of them are friends in the Discord. I always think of Enya. I know it's random. She like never played a show ever.
Yeah.
And it's just, I always find that odd. And I also think of Mick Gordon, who's one of my favorite producers. I love Mick Gordon's music. I think he's a legend. I just want to have one conversation with him before I die. But his social media is like, his fan base is rabid because Doom, the video game.
Right. Oh.
But it's also a very unique fan base. It's from the video game, but he did 1 soundtrack, or I think 2, but then whole drama. But all he does on social media is post weird production stuff that he does. That's it. Like Semitonal, that was Cosmo, I'm sorry. And I think, what was the question? I'm sorry.
No, you're speaking about it. It's like, you know, you're just talking about like there's other way, because we're talking about live and playing out live, which I think is like valid, but there is like you are in such a unique space where it's like you're not playing out live and you're having so much success.
Well, I want to
like for our listeners,
like
Unlike Pluto here has that project has like 2 million monthly listeners, and again, like that's like a lot of like his fans. Like he's not getting playlists.
But I do think live shows really work for like so many artists. And if I did do live shows, there would be an argument for. I've been told this by couple of agents that, hey man, if you did live show, I've been told this by a pretty big rock guy. Like, he was like, hey man, if you just did like 5 shows a year, you would see a massive difference. So it is something it wasn't in my heart to do it yet, because I love making music and keep putting music out, and I love conversing with the fans. But I'm not saying that don't do live shows. I'm just saying, my point is like Enya never did one. There are examples of just different fan bases and true fan bases you can create nowadays, but I still think shows are like, albums and shows are like the best thing that I think you can do. I still think that.
I want to clarify that. I mean embodied, not exclusively like playing live or doing live shows or just doing pop-ups, but having something that's platform agnostic that connects with your real life, you know, which I think you can do.
Platform agnostic.
Hey.
Wow.
Hey. Imagine a world. Imagine a world.
Wow.
I want to go on to I love that. I want to go into our next little section here. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I think listeners would kind of like our 2 cents on it. Kat, when you were self-releasing, you're mostly using DistroKid, if I'm remembering correctly, right?
Yes. Yeah. I started with Level.
Okay.
And then they no longer exist. So,
Nice.
but then I went to DistroKid. Yeah.
What's been your, experience with DistroKid, just self-releasing? Like, what's your honest review?
I mean, I think a lot of the features on DistroKid are great. I love the feature that you can do the splits. So it like automatically will cut out your splits for you. So you don't have to worry about that. I love that feature. And I miss that being with the label because I have to do it myself now. And honestly, it was pretty straightforward, like very easy. Obviously, I mean, I don't know if they advertise that they give playlisting support. I didn't have that experience. I think it was just literally purely just to get it up on platforms. But yeah, I thought DistroKid was great. I thought it was very user-friendly and pretty easy.
Yeah. I mean, speaking as a producer and like a collaborator with artists who use DistroKid, I do really like that it can just like do the automatic things because it just makes it so much easier for everyone. I know like when I was an artist, I used TuneCore, so this was 10 years ago, so I don't know how much has changed. At the time, I couldn't do that. And there were a couple songs, like we had one collab song, we had one that we had to pay out producer, and it was just like such like a headache to be like, oh, right, yeah, we have to pay this guy, and then we have to like go through the statements now. And it's just, it's so much easier when DistroKid does that, Stem does that. I know a couple
TuneCore does it now too.
They do it. I figured they must have.
Two Lost as well.
Yeah. Nate, what were you using when you were self-releasing?
I think we like did all of them. I think we were kind of like, I think we probably moved our catalog along 5 or 6 times after all was said and done. I think we started on CD Baby because that was kind of what there was
CD Baby
at the time. Then I think we moved our catalog over to AWOL because they came to our college and they were like, we're the independent distributor and we have white glove service to playlisters. And we're like, oh, sure, sounds great. Sure. Then we moved it over to Stem, and we liked Stem for a really long time, especially because they were the first to do the splits because they were a fintech company. That was their original reason for existing. So that was really great, and we loved that, especially because that was around the time we were collaborating a lot more. So then when things sort of settled down a bit, I mean, and we had some TuneCore around that time too. When things settled down a bit, we went to DistroKid because we just needed to park it somewhere, and it was
and just
what was taking the least and had splits. We did do about 2 years ago. We moved the catalog over to Two Lost, just again because it's like it was a monthly fee, so there wasn't any commissions, there wasn't like anything yearly that was kind of hitting us. I have solo a couple of releases with United Masters, and my partner did 1 or 2 releases with Venice. So we have covered the board.
You've kind of like gone. If you had to say, like, I know like there's like different reasons for using different distributors, whether it's price, some of them offer services. But if you're an artist just starting out right now, what would you recommend to like an artist being like, cool, you're just starting out, like use this service?
If you're just starting out, I would opt. One, I would forget about any kind of label services. That's not real anymore. You want some things. I mean, I think a pre-save link is not a terrible thing to have, or just like a smart link, like service. Most of them have it now. But that's good to have, and saves you some money doing that. Early on, just from a pure economic standpoint, doing a commission-based service, even if it's a 5%, like a CD Baby, or even 10%, is not terrible, because if you're only getting 2,000, 3,000 streams, effectively that's only like a couple of cents.
It's
nothing. You'd actually be losing more money by having like a fixed dollar amount than the percentage.
Yeah.
I think that like mathematically there's a threshold that you cross where that 5%, you could do that actual math. And if you don't know how to do math, that's why we have, I guess, AI now. But there is a threshold you could cross where like it is cheaper to have like a monthly payment or a yearly payment than and that's just pure economics. But the reason I throw that out there is because almost all the services do the same thing. They all kind of do the splits. They all have the smart link. They all say that they offer other services as far as pitching, but they don't really. So ultimately, it's like, does it get your stuff there on time? Is it easy to edit your shit if you need to change something? Do they get their metadata correct? And what is the sort of effective economic component of it? So when you're early on, start with commission. When you're later on, go with fees. I would argue the same for your lawyer and your manager and all that other stuff.
Yeah.
You know?
I think I personally I'm commission based for all that stuff. I think that's the way to go.
No,
But
for
that's just
sure,
me.
for sure. Yeah.
Anyway, different podcast episode. Pluto, what are you using for your projects when you're self-releasing?
DistroKid. There are some caveats, I think, with DistroKid. I'm not going to say who told me this. There is apparently Cosmo, stop licking me. Thank you. There is apparently a rating that the DSPs have with certain distributors that will affect the per dollar stream, like the money per 1,000 streams. We do not know this number, but the reason I'm bringing this up is you can imagine how much AI slosh that is. Some of it's technically illegal, and some people are just destroying straight up Lord of the Rings songs.
It's crazy. It's
and you can guess which platforms. I'm not going to say which ones. I did hear this from a few people, and that is one thing I'm weary of. I have a lot of music on DistroKid. It's the easiest to use. I do view it as the Spirit Airlines of distribution, where, listen, you get what you get. Like, they're not telling you, hey, we're going to do this and this for you. They're just like, listen, you want your music on the platform? You got it. If you make a mistake, though, it's kind of on you. Okay? So,
White glove, they don't even have gloves.
Yeah. It's like, if you do not buy a checked in bag, I don't know what to tell you. You need to throw the bag off the plane. I do view it as kind of that, but it is like, I do agree with Nate, though. It's, if you are starting out, I think going percentage based is better. But DistroKid is also very easy to use, and and the splits are easy. If you have a lot of music like me, it starts to get slightly daunting and it gets scary. If you have a lot of music, if you do experience releasing a lot of music on one distribution platform, if anything goes wrong, you're kind of dead in the water. Anything goes wrong. If they think you're added to a fraudulent playlist, which you didn't do, it scares me how fragile sometimes the stories I'm hearing about these.
There was a distributor that went out bankrupt recently.
Really?
Yeah,
which one?
and I forgot. I should have looked it up. I forgot.
Which
Recently,
one?
if we could.
Nate, oh sorry, not this Nate. My Nate. Can you look it up and just like maybe text me what it is if you can?
Yeah,
this is why we have the intern in the chat here. But go ahead.
I saw a lot of people just really upset about that. You know, that like this is where these things live. Like oftentimes, artists, producers are good archivists. Artists aren't. So sometimes you don't have those masters. Sometimes when you put something up, there is a little bit of like and now it's there. And
was it Media Math?
What was that, Nate?
There's a DSP. I haven't heard it, so I don't know if it's exact. But it sounds they're called Media Math.
I'm seeing Utopia distribution.
2023, there was one that went down.
Oh, okay.
Well, hi, Nate. There's two Nates in here, I guess.
I know
Sorry.
that's Nate R. My intern for our listeners who are listening
nice to
audio
meet you, Nate R.
only. Yeah.
But to Nate's, Nate, I appreciate you bringing up the bankruptcy. It does bring another question of when you are distributing. Let's say you have like 2 albums or even an album that you put so much time into. The scary thing is I've been a part of I released 60 songs with a label, and they sold it. They're 50%. They controlled the masters. So I was forced to get paid by, I don't even know who it is.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's just what happens. So, these other things get bought out.
Yes, but with distribution.
Level music. That's what it was.
Level. Yeah.
Level.
Level. That's
Yeah.
I was say Sam Ash music.
So Level was the one that I was on. So I lost a song.
Oh
no! Wait,
No.
is it gone forever?
Yeah, it's gone. I mean, I could have uploaded it elsewhere, but it was kind of, my brand kind of changed direction. It was like a lot more of like my poppy thing. But yeah, I got onto Level when it was still beta because somebody I was working with was like, this could be really cool. I think it was like Warner's distribution, and so it could be cool because they might push your stuff, like that whole thing. And then so I was like, okay, cool. But then anyway,
that's so lame that I'm looking it up. I just think that's terrible that they're like, oh, we're going to delist all your songs by this date and you have to transfer. Annoying transferring.
Oh my God.
Like, we're not taught to do that. Like, that's terrible.
No, you have to, and like who like keeps track of like, especially like you, Pluto, like all like your IRC numbers. It's just
I have
I have
I'm
a
sure you
spreadsheet
do.
now. Yeah.
Right.
You kind of have to when it gets at a certain point when you're moving it around that much. It's like that's your only. You can't Google your own IRSC. So
no, you have to just have it. I know. I should. For my old band, it's like still up. I think it's on TuneCore. God,
Well.
I just get like random like monthly like or however often they pay out like payouts from it because it's somehow still getting streams, which is like nice, but it's doing the thing.
Can I ask you guys?
Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
So I don't want to like get into like the ethical question of this because obviously like a lot of people have opinions about Spotify and everything like that. I'm not super interested in that. I am curious just like what the consensus is with everybody around like discovery mode, like the 30% trade to get that sort of discovery boost from the algorithms. Like not ethically, how do you feel about it? Do you think that it's a good choice or have you found that it's a good choice?
Yeah, that's
yeah, I mean, have any of you guys, I have my takes on it, but have any of you guys actually used it?
Yeah, it's funny you asked that because I just tried it on a couple of songs that I had self-released. So they were like lower numbers and barely, not really getting a significant number of streams anymore. I think that's discovery mode. I know there's the two. There's like the one you can only do marquee. There's marquee and then discovery mode. So I did marquee a while ago. I didn't see like any significant results from that personally. And then discovery mode, I'm not sure. I just started it, so I'll have to let you know. But I was curious too. These songs, I was like, I feel like I have nothing to lose because they kind of were winding down. So I was like, let me try it. But yeah, I'm curious to see.
I honestly don't. It scares me. Part of it. I agree with you. Like the morality point. I think part of me thought that they would like, oh, just add the songs and we're just gonna like bring your streams down and then bring it back up. But then the ones that we brought back up are discovery mode streams. So I don't know if they did that. I don't know because I don't actually look at my streaming numbers because it gives me really bad anxiety. So I just stay away. I don't even open Spotify.
You're doing
for
good.
artists.
I just took a peek. Yeah.
I don't even check it. I don't check it. I don't even check YouTube views. I like squint my eyes and I just go to the comments and respond. I have terrible anxiety to stay away from it because if you do well, it affects you. If you do terrible, you're like, oh no, like yeah,
it's the worst.
I don't know.
If the math, like in my head, it's like if the maths, if that 30% gets offset by, the equal amount of growth, which they give you those stats and they tell you, well, if it's not happening, it's not happening. But there is definitely like a bit of a prisoner's dilemma of like, well, if everybody does it, then it's as if nobody's doing it. But if I don't personally do it, then I'm gonna lose out on this. And so there is this sort of like weird like standoff, where it's like I'll put them down if you put them down,
Yeah, it's it's a thing that like I've thought about it, and it's I love the idea of we're talking about commission based when you're an artist, you don't have a lot of money to spend on things, and you're like, okay, cool, I don't have to spend anything to maybe push my stuff, and it's just like taking on the back end. That's a good deal. That's what so much of the music industry is based off of. But yeah, it's like I kind of like what you're saying, Nate, where you're like, well, if we're all doing it, now we're just all getting paid less. And like, what's the real difference? And I don't believe Spotify is ever going to really truly give the numbers, who's doing what. It's a tough thing. I wish we would all just be like, no one does it and go on with it. But I don't think that's a reality. It's a good question. I think it's something to really think about.
It's a very good question, and it's hard to fully answer. We're like at the mercy, like Spotify became like the economy of music at some point.
I mean, and the thing is too about Spotify that I have a lot of gripes against Spotify. Believe me, I've said it on this podcast many times. I'm not shy about it. But the thing about Spotify is that its algorithm is by far the best.
Yeah,
it is the best algorithm, and it is going to connect you with fans that might like you better than any other DSP. And I think that's the allure of that discovery mode where we're like, at least for me, if I was releasing music, I'd be like, all right, well, like at least I can trust that the algorithm knows what it's doing and it's going to push me to, and again, like that's how you build up those fans slowly and steadily. Like that's maybe an argument pro for it, where it's like, yeah, maybe I didn't get a bunch of like streams on it, but like, hey, I got like 100 new fans, and like that's something. That's not nothing.
I think Justin and I first maybe start. I don't know if this is right, but I think we first started talking. I wrote an article called "A Reluctant Defense of Spotify," where like I don't want to defend this platform, but also to your point that there isn't right now a platform, save for TikTok, but that feels purely algorithmic, that has prioritized discovery and has made it easy to like that is the value prop that I think justifies some of the financial trade-offs. That again, to sort of commit it from like a platform agnostic goal, Spotify isn't the whole music economy, it's like the scorecard, and I think that that's like not the worst thing in the world, but when it becomes the backbone of the economy is when that is ultimately a problem. But to your point, Justin, like it's on the one hand, as much as we want to hate this thing to whatever, what other discovery centered commitment have we gotten from any other platform? Apple couldn't care less as long as iPhones are being sold and Sonos are being sold. Amazon absolutely could not care less because it's a Prime add-on. It's fine. 10 cents not relevant. Like it's Spotify. It's Spotify. And that's
they need to make money to survive. But that's the thing too. I think I forget who mentioned it earlier, but it's if you're trying. Again, everyone has different kind of like long-term goals as being an artist, right? But if you're trying to be, I hate to say real artist, but if you're trying to be a real artist, trying to do the thing and tour and have a fan base, if your main income source is money from streaming, that's the wrong way to go about it. It's been said many times on this podcast that like, being an artist, you're like basically like a glorified t-shirt seller to a certain extent. Yeah. And again, this is another argument for the pro discovery mode is that like if I'm building fans that are going to come see me live, that like yes, maybe they're taking 30% commission from my streaming, but like now they're buying a t-shirt and that paid for itself multiple times over. It's that bigger long-term building fan base kind of a thing.
We could say it's a grift that they take 30% or whatever, but like if the alternative is I'm giving a publicist $1,000 or $2,000 a month, like, is that any different? And the hope is that the publicist gets X number of streams as one of the sort of metric goals. And so that's the thing is like, if discovery mode for the 30% they're taking is giving me 20,000 streams, but I give 2,000 to a publicist and they give me 10,000 streams or whatever, and maybe they're bots. That's kind of where some of the tension is for me is like, we call these things, we have our moral issues about companies or this, that, and the other thing. But we're, at the other hand, our only other options are just sort of shelling out money to publicists or other folks who...
Well, yeah, and those publicists don't have access to the algorithm.
Yeah.
They just don't. Spotify's the only one that has it. That's the value of that company is their algorithm. Yeah. That's the name of the game.
And no shade to publicists, but a little bit of shade to publicists.
No, it's I mean, listen, like when I was in my band, it was publicists. Like they were the ones that like it was we'll get you on blogs and the blogs will get you on playlists, and it's like that was 2015. That's just not the thing anymore. Right?
What was your
band?
Not
a thing anymore. I was in a band called Royal Tongues.
Oh, okay.
We were pretty good. We had our moment. We made specific kind of music, and I'll self-deprecate all day if you let me.
That's Sleeping Lion's Instagram bio, so
Right. Hey, gang! I just wanted to pop in here to let you know that the best way you can help this podcast grow is to rate and review us wherever you listen to podcasts. It tells the algorithm to push our show to other listeners so we can grow, and it's one of, if not the best way to help support this podcast. So, if you wouldn't mind, take a second to rate this podcast. Sharing it with your friends would be amazing too. All right, back to the pod. Okay, so I'm like looking at my little like hit list here. We hit a lot of the stuff already. One of the things that I want to talk about, because this affects producers a lot more and collaborators and songwriters, is and if you guys don't feel comfortable talking about this, that's perfectly fine. You don't have to speak on it, and I can just edit it out. But paying producers and mixers and collaborators or giving them equity in the thing, I think that's something that a lot of artists starting out are like really worried about, where they're like, oh, I want to work with people, but I can't pay them, or I'm not really quite sure what to do to make it fair and what that. Kat, I want to start with you, and like I know we work together a lot, so that's a just a disclaimer to everyone. But you work with other producers, and you're self-releasing a lot of this music. You don't have big budgets. How do you like to try and make it fair for everyone and make it worthwhile for your collaborators to work with you?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I do give master points to songwriters, so
Let's
I feel like
go.
that's, yeah,
There
I
you
feel
go.
like that's important, so that, for the songwriters, it's very hard as a songwriter to make money.
I'm just also going to cut you off really quick. I
Yeah.
think artists, if you want like quote unquote bigger songwriters to work on your project, that right there is the way to do it. It's like
Yeah.
that is a cheat code to
Tell
like
your
just,
friends, tell your neighbors, tell your
Yeah.
labels.
it's like
Get it
I'm
going.
telling you, I've been seeing like smaller artists and like briefs sent to me. They're like so and so self releases, but they give master share to songwriters. Like they've been including it when they're in their bio and stuff. So just something
Yeah.
to talk about. But Kat, go ahead, keep going.
Yeah, no, totally. So yeah, that, and then also, I mean, being an artist is just expensive. I think when you go into it, you just kind of have to understand that, instead of saving money and putting aside money for vacation or like the newest technology or whatever it might be, at least for my case, because I'm a smaller artist, I don't have a big budget. I just put aside my money towards paying my producers, paying for mix, paying for master, and I just kind of accept that that's the reality. And you kind of you love it, first of all, that's why you're doing it. But then two, you cross your fingers that eventually things will build enough momentum to where you'll get a return on your investment. And, obviously it's tax deductible too. So that helps.
Right.
But
That is a big thing that
There's
people
that.
don't think to do.
yeah, it's
Bring
tax
that
deductible.
income down.
It's a
I mean,
write-off,
and the thing-
David.
Yeah, right. No, and two, people don't understand a lot of times when they're starting out that like, yes, this is art. You're an artist, but like you are first and foremost a small business.
Yes.
And the sooner you realize that the classic saying, but it's so true. And this is also true for producers. This is advice for you guys too, is that you need to spend money in order to make money. I was in a band. I'm not saying you should do this, but I put a lot of stuff on a credit card and we put a lot of money down, and I worked 3 jobs at one point, and we had to spend, 5 figures to make 5 figures and 6 figures. That's just like what it is. And if you want to take this seriously, you have to understand that any small business, whether you're opening a pizza shop or you're doing music, you have to like, it's risky. And if you're just like, I don't want to spend money, I just want to release music, it's like, it's just not going to work for you for the most part. It can.
It's not. Yeah.
We actually we used to say you have to spend money to lose money.
Right.
It's like whenever we'd be like, oh yeah, this is gonna cost that. It's like you gotta spend money to lose money.
Yeah.
Like it was us talking ourselves out of purchases, but also us just talking ourselves into a gamble. Like,
Right. Yeah.
But oh sorry.
No, I was going to say Pluto, like, I listen, again, disclaimer, I did a lot of, unlike Pluto's early releases, we collaborate a lot, and he is one of the most equitable artists out there. So I really commend you for that. But how do you, how do you like to like share in the equity and make sure your collaborators, when you self-release, are getting taken care of?
Master.
Yeah.
Publishing doesn't pay much and you're independent.
Unfortunately, yeah.
I just always treated master as, the publishing to a point, because I am like in this studio for a long time. I think you shouldn't, master I think is incorrectly allocated now that streaming is around. I think you should look at it kind of like what people bring, what value do they bring, not the time spent. And, if I'm writing a song, man, sometimes if the writer even doesn't like this, if they're there with me and I wouldn't have made this song without them, you should appreciate that and make sure they're paid. Because if you're just giving them publishing, I am so sorry, but that is not going to make a lot of money unless it's a hit song or it just gets a sync, which is so rare, especially if it's independent. I think just treat the master a little bit like the equity of the song and appreciate the people that made the song with you and take care of them. And then you'll have people that work with you for a very long period of time. And people will feel like it's theirs and you're not like, hey, just make me a song, get out,
Right.
That's what I think.
They're more invested,
fair.
and they care. And no, that's so true. And they care more too. And they want to
Yeah.
like. It's also like, yeah, I want to be a part of this project. I want to grow with you. I want to do the thing. And again, I just think it's like how you're gonna get out of. Well, I worked with this person once, and I never work with them again. You're gonna be able to build those relationships. You're gonna be able to like work with really talented people because they're gonna see the value in working with you. Nate, what was your experience like with all that?
Well, and I think that there's actually this other little, especially if you're a new artist, this other little angle that it's in some ways a direct kind of honest feedback. Because if you're shopping around, you can, like, if you're looking around all these big producers, all these whatever, and this person quotes you $2,000, this person quotes you $3,000, this person quotes you $5,000. If you got that money, and congratulations if you do, or you got a credit card with a good credit line, like, okay, great, you got that producer, but you don't know if you're good. If you are in the spirit of giving equity, if because of your financial situation you only have equity, I think you learn very, very quickly, not just if you're good, but who actually believes in you. Like if an artist, because a lot of towards the end, like, you know, we sort of, as a lot of people do, as Justin, I know you did, we pivoted from being artists. We still maintained the artist project for a long time, but we pivoted from being artists into being producers and songwriters. So we would have to kind of vet and make these decisions on a daily basis. Are we charging this person a fee? Do we know that they can cover the fee? Are we asking for equity? And then vice versa, when people are writing for us, you know, what kind of equity are we giving up here, et cetera? Who are we paying and who are we giving equity? So those decisions, oftentimes when we were when we were producing, was, do we believe in this person? Now, if this person came up to us with $3,000, it didn't matter if we believed in them. We liked $3,000, and it covered our time and it covered our enthusiasm. But if you know, the artist was like, I don't really have money, these are my demos, and we're like, fuck, this artist is fantastic. We're like, okay, let's do an equity deal, and they now know that we. And I think being an artist is, especially in the early stages, is about cumulative buy-in. Who are the people who actually genuinely believe in you, as opposed to the people who you're paying, the people who, you know, kind of see other things about you that might be, whether you're an influencer who has pivoted, or there's some, you know, sometimes there's like weirder power or gender dynamics, whatever. Like, how you know somebody actually believes in you is that they're willing to forego the financial piece and just talk about equity. So we tried to, oftentimes it was from Sleep and Line songs, we'd keep it between 20 and 40% that we would allocate to the people that we worked with, from producers to songwriters. We even, just because like our best friend is an incredible photographer who did cover art that you absolutely have seen. We actually allocated 1 or 2% to our cover artists, because we believed, especially on Spotify, that was something. I think the only place where we didn't allocate equity was in the mix and the master, just because that wasn't appropriate at the time. I don't know if it's still even, you know, would be now, but it was the kind of thing where, like, it wasn't really a question. It's just, you got the people's rates, you picked the mixer or master person that had the right, you know, sound and time at that point. But yeah, ultimately, like, we loved doing everything commission based, because in our heads, it's like, if this song's a big hit, I'm sorry, the difference between $1 million and $600,000, like, as far as just a life-changing amount of money, is actually, it's called marginal utility. It actually isn't that significant. If everybody else is also thriving and we're also all writing together and we're all growing and getting syncs and everything like that, it snowballs. So we try to be as equitable as possible. But yeah, I think that especially if you're an artist starting out, if you have the money, it's good to make people feel valuable. I always think you maybe should have a little bit of both. Hey, take $1,000, take $500 and 10%. Right. Have a little bit, but I would be cautious to not have whoever you're working with not have some sort of skin in the game. And we felt vice versa. We never wanted to work with an artist that we believed in and do it entirely on a fee. If we believed in the artist, we would say, fuck whatever fee this is. We want a point, 2 points, 5 points. And then, okay, sorry, lastly, give your fucking songwriters master points. This is so stupid that this is even a conversation. Like, how else do you think they're getting paid for this? Your fucking PROs? I'm sorry. Then guarantee me a radio hit and we'll talk about our PROs. If not, because I've seen labels cap total collaborators at 5%. I've seen this thing where producers are fighting with producers who are fighting with songwriters for this small little whatever. I know John Bellion, I'm now just riffing on what he said, but I've experienced it. You guys have experienced it. This is ridiculous. Give the songwriters, allow the artists to decide what the equity is of their proportion of a label deal. And if you're an independent artist, just treat your songwriters right. Don't act like it's taboo that they're asking for points. That for me is insane, and I think that needs to go.
Yeah, and like the thing is too, it's like, even just speaking as a producer, right, who works with, you know, indie artists, self-releasing artists, major label artists, I think everything is kind of a sliding scale, because I do understand when artists do want to still own a majority of the thing. And it's like, cool. Like I'm fine splitting a master with you 50-50 as the producer where I'm not getting paid anything. I'm also fine getting like a small fee and then taking less. It's all kind of a sliding scale for me. It's like, taking care of the songwriters is really, really important, giving them 5, 10, 20%, depending on, there's so many factors, right? Artists, I do think, should still have the majority of it, because they are, they are putting up the money for it a lot. It's their thing.
100%.
It's their face. It's their brand. It's always tough. There's not just like a one set answer. Unfortunately, it's going to be what everyone is most comfortable with. And, most people in the music industry, especially when we're first starting out, are cool. We just want to work. We want to make things fair and do the thing. And you can figure it out. I think that like just understanding that sliding scale kind of a thing.
It's all negotiable and dynamic. There was this book called Mixer Man. Do you ever read Mixer Man? Like there was this book, Mixer Man. He called all of the sort of splits conversations before a song came out monopoly money, because none of it was real. Like when you're early on, like your equity is virtually valueless or infinitely valuable. And when you're later on, you can actually guess sort of an average of what 10% would be, if you average 100,000 streams. You can use that as part of the sort of scale of, oh, I want this fee, now I want this equity,
Right. Right. Yeah. And it's just kind of figuring out what makes sense for you. I think this next question is great because all of you guys have kind of like gone between, self and indie and whatever. Kat, I want to start with you, because now that you've kind of gone with an indie here, when do you think is the right time for an artist to make that step from self-releasing to like even going to a small independent label and to try and use some of their services to help build your project a little bit more?
That's a great question. Yeah, I would be really careful, because I think there's so many people who are weird and predatory, and there's some standards that, if they're asking you for money up front or something like that. I think when you're brand new and you're independent and you're just trying to figure out what the best move is, I don't think that's the time to partner with a label or partner with a company, especially if they're ever asking for upfront money. So just, cautionary tale. Yep. But I think for me, because I'm aware of that, I really vetted this label before I decided to go with them. Right. I had a friend who had released with them. She was happy with them. She told me the pros and cons. Like, I felt like I was like informed enough. And then at a certain point, you are taking a risk, because it's like, it's the music industry, and you just do not know until you get into a deal sometimes what it's going to actually be like. Is it going to be good for you, or is it not going to be good for you? And I feel like
the thing, to cut you off really quickly too, it's like, what can be good for one artist or person can be horrible for another one too.
Absolutely.
It's like going into a marriage or a relationship. It's like sometimes it just works, sometimes it doesn't. And I think that's also really important to understand as well when you're like going into these deals.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I think it's just, being cautious and then making that calculated risk. And I think that ties into what you were just asking too about the percentages and everything. You don't want to be so risk averse either, though, that you just can't take that next step forward. Because I've done plenty. I mean, we just talked about Level. I've done plenty of things where it's like you do something and then 10 years down the line, you're like, that wasn't a great idea, but you cannot know until you try it, Yeah. So it's a calculated risk.
Yeah. Mr. Pluto, what about you? What made you want to because you've kind of gone back and forth between like indie release, self-release, indie release. What kind of like goes through your thought process when you're going to them?
I have two things that I'll always say, and I think every artist should always ask themselves this two things. Is number one, does the person give a shit about your music? Do they care? Exactly. Do they care? Are they excited? Do they know your catalog? Do they know? They don't have to know the whole catalog, but do they know? Like, do they know, oh, yeah, you're doing more rock stuff recently. Oh, you're doing this pop thing. Just, do they care? That's number one. And you can suss that out in like 2 meetings, honestly. It's pretty easy to suss out. Number two, you need to make sure they're not going to leave said company or label once they sign you, because you don't know what's happening. even if you ask them,
Okay,
everything's
really quickly
fine.
for our listeners, when you say they, like
Yeah.
you're talking about like an A&R, I'm assuming.
An A&R or
Yeah.
even a label manager
Like the
that
head,
but an A&R, you have to make sure they're not going to leave the company. I can't tell you how many times, and I'm sure Kat and Nate can attest to this, and you as well. It's just they leave, dude. This industry, the
Yeah.
business people in the business, they just hop around. You need to make sure you're not signing into something. The person that is signing you need to make sure that they're going to stay at that company. And you need to ask that because if you're going to promise an album or however many songs, however many years, just make sure of these two things. If they give a shit and if they're actually going to be at this company. That's it.
Yeah. There is such a thing, funny enough, as an A&R clause. They're very hard. They're harder and harder to get into contracts
in there.
nowadays. But like, it is something that like you can ask for, where it's
Yeah.
like, hey, if my A&R leaves, like I want like a different set of like options, for whatever reason. Nate, what about you? What made you kind of go, be like, okay, I think this release we're going to do an indie or, just a label?
Well, and because we were sort of like in the SoundCloud era of indie labels and had sort of an overall like negative experience, we did stay self-releasing throughout, but we worked with a lot of folks and a lot of our friends too during like the TikTok era. We saw every imaginable iteration of deals come through, both of stuff that we were writing on as well as stuff that our friends had put out. I think that the sort of three things to kind of keep in mind, one is that, and this was very prevalent in TikTok, especially for people who were on the younger side, is that like when you dangle an advance in front of somebody's face, $1 million, $100,000, like if you have a 20% deal, you have to pay you have to get 5 times that to pay back that advance. When we started out, we wound up in $20,000 of credit card debt, even with interest and everything like that. That's not the same as having to 5x whatever money we were getting. And so, or at least we had the option to not have it be 5x if we paid the debt aggressively. So that's the first thing is like, an advance is a little bit in advance is good to have money to work with and some skin in the game, but recognizing that is not without strings attached. I do also think that and as also financially, that is these long timelines. Justin, I made a little cameo on that episode, but labels aren't great at paying you and royalties. Notoriously, they're not great at that.
They are not.
You sign
The
to a
major
label,
ones especially.
Yeah, so you sign to a label with to a certain understanding that it is this very large gamble, that whatever marketing force that they have is going to throw you into a leverage position and a success position where money is coming from 800 different other sources and you're not in a 360 deal, and the label cares about you enough that they aren't fucking around and paying you. But if you're signed to a label and because you want like a 3x bump on your streams or a 10x bump on your streams, then you're really playing, I think, a pretty dangerous game. Because I think the last piece is that I think would be a piece of consideration, and this was to what we were saying earlier, is that if you're coming up with a really good and tight-knit collaborative team, like if you really love your producer, you really love your songwriters, you really, in a lot of ways, you really love your manager, like the creative collaboration that maybe you have with your manager. Some managers don't really do that, but some do give that kind of feedback and career advice and everything like that. I'm not saying that every single label deal like fucks that up, but it does change that dynamic in a meaningful and significant way. Yeah. And it does run the risk of, if you're doing really well, leaving the people that you were with behind, or if they have these more sort of restrictive deals, forcing your collaborators into uncomfortable splits, into uncomfortable conversations, into having to lawyer up just to have, basic things sort of settled. And I think that like, if you really do cherish your collaborative relationships, it's not worth taking the first indie deal that you find. It is worth, staying in that self-release place so you have a lot more flexibility about how you treat your collaborators.
Yeah, I mean, it's even self-released for like indie, certain indie labels. I think something that not a lot of new artists understand so much is that the difference in money making, right? Yes, you can have so much higher earnings, like so much higher earnings if you're on a major label and you like get to that point where you're like a Benson Boone or Billie Eilish or, another be named BB Rexa, right? We'll go with all those. But I do think there's so much value because like I don't think people understand like how much money like we'll say like a Phoebe Bridgers actually make, right? Like has never had a radio hit, just tours her ass off, makes good money, all indie releases, and they're very successful and they make like more money than you think. And again, like I brought up earlier, but like Ani DeFranco, like she does very well for herself. She's like making good money, like just having her fan base. And like, there's so much value in that. And I think just people think of, again, these are people who are not in the music industry yet, who don't understand the economics of it. They see it from the outside where it's like, well, I'm only going to be making money if I'm like at this like hundreds or like, well, tens of millions of dollars, at that level with all those B names that I said before. But it's like, no. There's so many other opportunities out there that you can build your fan base and like have like a real money making machine and be a successful small American business or, outside of American business. Okay. I want to go on to our next.
So there's an opportunity cost there's an opportunity cost of cutting that off. And sorry, the last little metaphor is just like, I'm a big fan of The Bachelor. If you're on The Bachelor, like as a contestant, you don't make any money for it. But typically the reason why you do go out on it other than for love, if you're not there for the right reasons, is because you can leave The Bachelor and wind up with a successful social media career where you're making millions of dollars in SpawnCon. Right. I think a label can work in a similar way. If you don't have a 360 deal, you use it to get that marketing bump, and then you have all these other income streams that are coming in. But that should be the mentality, not the label is going to be what makes me the most money from my career.
Yes, totally. Okay. I want to go on to our second to last topic here because I'm taking up way too much of your guys' time here, which I appreciate endlessly. Ms. Rebello over here, if you have a question that you want to ask, let me know. I'm going to ask. I'm going to go and I have Instagram's being annoying. What just happened?
Yeah, I do, but I'll let you go.
Yeah. Let's
see.
Hey,
he's back. This is a great question, because I had it on here and I kind of skipped it over, and I don't want to spend too much time on it. But Kat, I'm going to start with you. You're releasing a lot of music here. This question is from The Real G Black on Instagram. I didn't laugh. Someone else did. What are the best practices you found effective? Rollout of a song, teaser music, basically like the pre-rollout. Like what have you found that has worked best for you?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah. I actually, and I don't know if I'm right on this. This is just personal opinion. I'm not crazy about pre-saves anymore, pre-save links. I haven't found that they're super effective. Like I haven't noticed a huge difference for me personally on the actual day of release, like boosting release radar or like anything like that. And also I've found that my fans can get a little bit confused as far as like if the song is out yet or if it's not out. So what I've been doing is doing like 1 week, 2 weeks maximum, where I just say, hey, like I have a new song, like build some hype and excitement, and then really start promoting it hard once it's actually out. So that has worked better for me. I've tried kind of both ways. And again, every artist is really different. That's just my personal experience.
Yeah,
but yeah.
No, I think it depends too on like where you are on the ladder. I've noticed that Benson Boone is like really known for this role. He'll tease a song for fucking weeks. Yeah. But it's like he's playing a different game. And I found that like artists more in like your realm here, Kat, like up and coming indie artists, like have a budding fan base where it's like if you just kind of really push it the week of the release, it doesn't get as lost in kind of the algorithm as much. That's kind of been like the new kind of thing. And really quickly, answer this really quick, and then I'm going to go on to Pluto and ask the same thing. How much time lead up are you giving yourself to upload it to streaming platforms so like their algorithms can pick it up?
So I do 8 weeks. So it's like a pretty long window, which makes it very hard you have to really plan ahead. It can be really hard. It can be really hard. I try to get like 3 to 6 releases out a year, and I'm still doing singles. Next year I might do something a little bit bigger, like an EP or an album or something. But yeah, you have to plan so far in advance because it's like 8 weeks ahead, right? And I'm still writing at the same time throughout the year. So it's like you really really have to plan things out for the year, because then also if you get into holidays like November, December, it's just like it's much harder to get good numbers. So for me, I try to plan it between like mid-January and October maybe, but like September. But I give it 8 weeks. 8 weeks lead up.
Wow.
Pluto, what about you, Ben? Like when you're releasing stuff, how do you like to kind of do it?
Definitely not 8 weeks. I think with my other projects that are just side projects, man, sometimes I'll distro it on a Monday and it comes out on the Friday. And I'll still like pitch it in the portal like on Thursday morning. Same plays I found for those projects, but for the like Pluto stuff, if I'm working with a label, it's typically 3 to 4 weeks. If I'm just self-releasing a Pluto song, man, I hate to say it, but like a week and a half before. And I don't really promote at all, because my game is different. I'm just consistent with the releases. So it's expected. But if I was promoting like Cat, I would for sure do 8 weeks. But yeah, for me, it's not that long, the time. And I keep hearing that algorithmically it makes no difference on Spotify. I keep hearing that. I don't know if that's true. It's like smoke and mirrors. I don't know if it makes a difference streaming wise. I don't know. My understanding,
I keep hearing
don't
like
think it does.
on average, I feel like the answer is like 3 weeks. Everyone's like, put it up 3 weeks, so like at least the DSPs can kind of like listen to it and be able to playlist it and all that. Nate, really quickly, I don't know if like because you haven't been releasing music as much lately, but like what were you guys normally doing? Like how much lead up?
Yeah, it would be 3 to 5 weeks. I especially again sort of towards the end, I found that the longer the period, the more there was a diminishing return, because not even just algorithmically, but we just kind of forgot about it. You know, it's like you have these 5 weeks, so it's like, okay, so I'll let people know the release date on week 5, and then I'll do 1 or 2 things on week 4, and then I'll start coning it out towards the end, and then like you get busy with your life, and you're like, oh wait, shit, it's coming out in a week. You know, it's like, so I think the more time I gave myself, the more time I had to forget about it and focus on other things. Whereas like when we would finish towards the end, we would try to, just to mitigate that, finish a song, put it up for distro with, you know, maybe a 2 or 3 week window. And that would kind of give us the kind of kick in the pants to be, okay, this is your window for these 2 weeks. This is your job. And then it's out. And you have that sort of week afterwards once it's out. But and I do agree with Kat. I think that like pre-saving was a pretty algorithmic thing. But I heard from a friend a while ago that you need to get like 10,000 for them to even like give a shit. So like it, if anything, it just sort of splits or like confuses. Like it splits. It's asking. It's using up psychologically a call to action, when I think ultimately you could just be having people getting excited. And so I would caution against that.
Yeah, with
But
people's
being
shorter.
Being 8 weeks ahead is great.
That's
Like,
crazy, Kat. I love that.
If you're
if you
8 weeks
can.
ahead, hold on. If you're 8 weeks ahead and you have like other songs you are destroying during that time too, that's crazy. That's super organized.
Yeah.
And that definitely is smart.
Yeah.
I'm just not organized like that. My Excel spreadsheet is not that far ahead.
Dude, I'm not either. So don't.
No,
I'm
everything was a
barely holding
panic.
it together.
Yeah, everything's a panic. Yeah.
And to be fair, like that is like the major label like kind of way to do things now. They do really plan out like that far ahead. Like our, you know, most of our mutual friends, Salem Elise just released her album, and like that album has been done for like months.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it was like all, you know, kind of pushing and doing the thing. Mr. Rebello, what's your question, my friend?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, it's kind of a two-part. How often would you say to release as someone early on in their career? I know the Russ example as being releasing a song a week, but that was something at a different time, I guess, when he started doing that. But I guess for the current landscape, what do you think would be an ideal approach? And then on top of that, at what point would you pivot away from the classic just releasing singles back to back and then start to maybe create a more cohesive long form version, like an album or an EP? And when would you deliver that? Because I find there's a better story to be told in a collective piece, but I also understand the game of releasing singles in the current distribution platform.
I'm gonna take this one first. Here's the thing that like just working with all different types of artists, and it's such like the classic Producer Points podcast answer where like it depends. I think what it really comes down to, and this is why I'm so glad like we have so many different types of artists having like different release strategies on here, right? Where it's like Pluto is kind of like Russ, where he like I said it in the intro, he's released literally 11 albums worth of material since 2019. And he's similar to Russ like that, where that is that specific relationship with the fan base that he has created and that Russ has created, where it's like that expectation is there. And because that expectation then is there and they have that craving for that much content, then like, yeah, release a song a week. But on the flip side of that, you have artists that like, I think a really great artist is like Sadie Jean, right? Where like girl releases like 2 songs a year, if that. And it's like, but that's just how she works. And that's what works for her and her fan base. And she can like play shows. She's not really touring that much yet, but she's like doing things. So it's like, at the end of the day, this is just my opinion, and I'll let someone else take it out after this, is that like, you have to tailor it to how you like to work and how you like to put out content. And that authenticity is what's going to like catch the fan base. Where if the fan base is like Pluto's, where they're like, he puts out songs weekly and I love that. And like some people want their artists to release a song weekly, like that's great. But there are fans who are like, no, I like that my artist puts everything into it and they'll release 2 songs a year. And that's what I want. I'll let anyone else raise their hand and take this question too if they want. Go ahead, Nate.
I think that when we started, there was, especially because it was very literally the sort of early beginnings of Spotify, there was a little bit of like a virgin complex around like your Spotify page. There was like an actual strategic negative to having too much stuff out, especially if it was stuff that wasn't doing so well. I remember like when we got to our 4th song or 5th song that we were being told by friends and agents, well, okay, if you get to your 6th song and you haven't crossed 1 million yet, you could kiss any chance of having an agent goodbye. Like it was really this, there was this kind of scarcity of like every song needs to be a hit and you need to not be just sort of flooding the zone on that. And then you were starting to see sort of the other side of it as time went on, where I had friends like Henry Jack Toll who would put out songs once a week, and you would build that following and build that just from pure accumulation. And I think now, because it's kind of the Wild West, the real piece of advice is the songs and the time, keep yourself, disciplined and keep yourself to timelines, but don't put out something because on a timeline because you think that's like the right strategic move or like whatever. To your point, Justin, like there is something about what is authentic to you and how you want your music to be consumed, how you want to make your music, the speed at which you want to make and put out your music and promote your music. And additionally to that EP question, I know plenty of people who like put out a bunch of singles and then great, I put out 5 singles, now it's an EP. But I think that like really to have like an EP that's worth putting out, especially on these types of platforms, it would be to have, okay, you have a story, you have a sound that you want to try, or there's one producer that you want to just do this full project with. And so it's coming from this authentic place. And then you could be strategic. Okay, there's 5 songs in an EP, 3 of them are singles, 1 of them is the focus. So, and then 1 of them people have to search for, like that's how you can gamify that or make that a strategy. But ultimately that's the thing. There was a reason to do little. There was a reason to do a lot. Now there's a reason to do whatever you want.
Yeah. And even like on top of that too, I think so much of it is like budget based, right? Where it's like
what you can afford. Yeah.
Right. Like Pluto and Russ, right? Russ self-produces a lot of it, right? Am I making that up?
Yeah, everything.
Right. And like so does Armand here. Like when your only cost is your time, then you can put out a song a week and it's like whatever. But if you're now, an artist like Kat, where like you're working with producers and mixers, and now your costs are like already going up, and like you can't expect your producers to like have that as high output like that. Like that's crazy.
Yeah.
You just can't do that. And that's where I tell people too, where it's, you might have like an EPs or an album's worth of work, but like, do you have like an EPs or album's worth of like money to promote it?
Yeah.
Or to put the money into and time into making the content to go behind it. Like that's the other part of it too. That's where I think like Kat, maybe you could like speak on this. It's like you've really only done like you're kind of like the opposite end of this, where you're only doing a couple releases a year.
Yeah.
What's kind of like been the idea behind that?
Yeah, well, I was going to bring up that point. I was like, for me, because it's really important to me now at this stage in my life to make sure I'm paying producers fairly and I don't self-produce, I'm limited by budget too.
Mm-hmm.
And with TikTok and Instagram starting to be more like algorithmically based, I'm really not spending hardly anything except for my time on marketing. So, which is very different from 10 years ago when you know, had to make sure you had a budget for marketing as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in a perfect world, you'd probably do both. But it's interesting because someone at the beginning of this conversation made me think it's like, you really are a personal brand. Like you're a musician, but let's say you have a song go viral, like crazy viral, and people love the song. And then they release, like that artist releases another song and it totally flops. It's because they loved that song. They didn't love like that person necessarily, right? They were like, we love this song. So I feel like whether you're releasing a song every week or, you know, 2 songs a year or whatever it is, the whole time is just, at least for my strategy, because I do a lot of stuff like online on social media, is to just curate that personal brand so that people are like, we love Kat as an artist. We like what she's doing. And we're going to like run up this one song. You know, if she's only doing 3 a year, we're going to run those songs up. Because that's kind of at this stage in my career, like all I can put out really. And also just, it feels like a good pace for me too. I think, you know, just not being a producer, it would be very hard for me to try to plan all that out with producers and be doing a lot more than what I am doing.
No, totally. And before we wrap here, Nate, like my Nate, not your Nate's.
I can't be your Nate, Justin. I'm hurt.
No, well, maybe one day.
Okay.
You could be my baby. No, my Nate. I think like what you're doing. Like, listen, I've been paying attention, buddy. I know what's going on. Like your vlogging thing. I think that's like really interesting content, right? And I think like when you do things like that, and like even like me with this podcast here, it's like it's all about slow building. And I think with artists, it's that same thing. It's like you just do the thing, and you know you like doing videography. And like, I think that's fucking great. And that's something that you can bring into your music. And if like part of your artistry and story is like, hey, like I'm going to release the music, but I'm also going to kind of bring you behind the scenes of how I'm making it. I think that's sick. And I think that's like a winning strategy potentially for you, you know, and like I know like so many of like the EDM world, especially years ago, like so much of like their allure was like they were doing just that. They were like, hey, look, I'm in fucking Ableton and I'm doing this, and like everyone's like, whoa, that's crazy.
Bringing people into
you
that
know?
process, you know, like a lot of producers.
It's really cool. Yeah, it's incredible. Okay, guys, we're gonna do our last segment here because we're a little bit over already. Calling this in the bounce folder. This is where each of you guys can do a little plug about something that's coming out or something that you're excited about that you just bought on the producer side of things. Whatever you want to talk about, you know, is fine with me. Mr. Unlike Pluto, why don't you start, buddy?
I just have one plug.
Do it.
I've been obsessed with synth modules and effect modules, and it's, you know, your rack modules will burn your wallet, but I found a company that I showed you, Justin, called Noise Engineering, and they actually have free plugins, and they're so bizarre. The distortion plugins. They also have a mid-side like saturator that is so amazing, and it's like $50. This company is like totally, I think, unknown in the plugin space.
Yeah.
And I highly recommend it. And it has changed my mixes. It's rare that I put another plugin in on my master. It's very rare. And this definitely became one of them. But they have so many cool things. I recommend
What's it called?
that. Noise Engineering is the company.
Okay.
And you just go to the plugins. They have a free distortion one called Ruina. Amazing.
Yeah.
It's very bizarre though, but it's great.
Yeah, they're cool. No, we were working together yesterday. He was pulling us some of those plugins. I was like, I've never seen these before.
Oh,
they
it's
sound
crazy.
they sound really, really cool. Nate, what about you, man? What you got in the bounce folder?
So a lot has bounced very recently, so I'll just throw that out there. I co-wrote and was the supervising sound editor on a Peacock show called The Warehouse Phase. It's a sitcom that was showrun, and the lead actor is a rapper named Charlie Curtis Beard, and so it's very much about like the intersection between social media and the music industry. So I think anybody listening to this will appreciate or see themselves in some of the conflicts there. Also, while Sleeping Lion has sort of taken a little bit of a backseat musically, I've been helping out my partner. So shout out Bashlow. That's BASHLOW. Obviously, I'm biased, but I I'm actually biased in the opposite direction. I love her music as somebody who's extremely critical, and she's been navigating the release world of things, and then my forays into the music industry. I've been writing and lecturing on the intersection of gambling theory and economic theory in the music industry. So that will at some point exist either in various forms as the gambler's guide to the music industry. And as a sort of offshoot of that, I'm working on a show and tour booking app startup situation.
Okay, we get it. You're smarter than all of us. You're
No,
so
no,
much
no,
smarter.
no. I just got some irons in the fire.
No,
Just some
I'm
irons in the
teasing.
fire.
Renaissance man.
Some irons in the fire.
I absolutely love all that, Nate. I think it's incredible. Kat,
I
what
love
about
that,
you?
man.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yes, I have a new song out. It's called Another Person. So check it out. Kat Kennedy is my name, and Kat Kennedy Music is all of my socials. So yeah, as you guys know, it's only a few a year. So this is one of those few.
I love it. And my In the Bounce folder, I had a song come out with an artist called her artist. Man, I'm gonna mess it up. It's like, you work with artists and you say their real names, but you never say their artist name. I think it's Frawley though. That's how I pronounce it. Frawley. That came out this week called. I wrote the song for the plot. Jesus, I'm like so bad. I'm so tired, guys. I have kids and it's late, and she's been sick. I'm so tired.
Listen,
great.
But
Oh
we
my
all
God.
forgive you.
No. But
Living the
anyway, 'cause,
dream.
I feel more bad because I'm like forgetting the name of the song. But I want to shout out because I think the song is great, and she's a songwriter herself. She has like other songwriting things, and she took care of the songwriters, and I think that's really important. And I just want to shout that out and give praise to where praise is due for that. So check out that song as well. I want to thank our 3 guests and, of course, Nathan Rebello, the intern here, for always helping out and asking his question here. Thank you guys so much for coming on the pod. Thank you to our listeners, and take care, guys.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Producer Points. Your support means the world to us. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, rate, and share with fellow music enthusiasts. For an encore, check out our Spotify playlist featuring all the songs we've discussed on the show, giving you the perfect soundtrack to your creative journey. Additional audio and video editing for this episode was done by Nathan Rebello. Until next time, this is Justin Gamella.